Church of Bowling Green. I'm so happy to see so many of you here today on this very rainy October day. I ask that you please set your cell phones to silent. We are a welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, however you identify, wherever you come from, and whoever you love, you are welcome here. Our Sunday services are different each week so that we can honor and learn from our wide array of traditions and beliefs. Today, our speaker is Venus Evans. I'll say a little more about her later. Though we each walk our own path here in this place, on the land of the Osage, the Cherokee, and the Shawnee, and now at this time, we journey together as one community. For Unitarian Universalists, the flaming chalice is a symbol of the light of learning and the love of our community. This morning, our chalice will be lit by Casey Lanehart, who is the sister of our speaker. As our congregation's chalice is lit, please remain seated and join us in humming, okay? We're not singing, we're humming. Hymn 362, Rise Up, O Flame. And Diane Lewis has a sharing moment for us.
This reading is excerpted from Reverend Mike Johnson's essay, Stolen Lands, Stolen Children, published in her book, Finding Our Way Home. Every October and November in the United States, we find ourselves in a season of false and misleading stories about European settlers and Native Americans. First, there's the story that Columbus discovered America in 1492. Then there's the story about the Pilgrims and Indians at the first Thanksgiving. It's astonishing, after all the work done by Native activists and their allies, that these stories keep returning year after year, unchanged. Perhaps many people are willing to acknowledge, if pressed, that when Columbus supposedly discovered America, it was already full of people. But that discovery has a more sinister history that's not often talked about. Prior to 1492, European church leaders and monarchs had collaborated in a stunning series of proclamations, which became known as the Doctrine of Discovery. In 1452, a papal bull declared that the King of Portugal had the right to conquer any Muslim and pagan peoples and enslave them. A few years later, a second letter declared that all Christian kings of Europe had the right to take the lands and possessions of any non-Christian people and keep them in perpetuity. If the pagan inhabitants could be converted to the Christian faith, they might be spared, but otherwise they could be enslaved or killed. The doctrine of discovery was also later claimed by England in 1496, authorizing the English explorers to seize any lands not already discovered by other Christian nations. The doctrine of discovery became the legal basis for the discoveries of Columbus and for the resulting attempts to conquer and colonize the Western Hemisphere, unleashing genocide on its peoples. It was also the legal basis for the slave trade. Its influence did not remain in that distant past. It's still a source of oppression to this day. It became the basis of U.S. trade. It became the basis of U.S. Indian law, beginning in 1823, when Chief Justice John Marshall ruled that Christian people who had discovered the lands of heathens had assumed the right of dominion and thus had diminished the Indians' rights to complete sovereignty as independent nations. He claimed Indians had merely a right of occupancy in their lands. This decision has never been overturned, and it is still cited on a regular basis in federal court. Responding to the requests of indigenous peoples, several religious denominations have passed resolutions to repudiate the doctrine of discovery, including Unitarian Universalists in 2012. These resolutions are a first step toward reckoning with the history of stolen lands and stolen children.
Thank you, Diane. We will now have a few moments for meditation, reflection, and prayer. The singing bowl will lead us into silence. After the silence, we will remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life, or hum Spirit of Life, which is hymn 123 in your gray hymnal. The words are pasted in the back cover. First, I will say an Apache prayer. May the sun bring you new energy by day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the breeze blow new strength into your being. May you walk gently through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life. Forrest will now lead us in hymn 128, For All That Is Our Life. Please hum along. As I mentioned earlier, Unitarian Universalists have a wide array of beliefs, and the speakers at our Sunday services come from many traditions. Here to share their own thoughts today is Venus Evans. Venus Evans is a tribal member of the Mi'kmaq Nation, Aroostook Band of Micmac, one of 4 federally recognized tribes of the state of Maine. She's a lifelong resident of Kentucky, born and raised in Laurel County, currently residing in Corbin, Kentucky. Venus is Commissioner at Large for the Kentucky Native American Heritage Commission, serves as President for Kentucky Indigenous Peoples, also as Secretary of the Governor's Interstate Indian Council, as well as being an alternate on the steering committee of the Cumberland chapter of Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. She's also a mother, grandmother, fitness enthusiast, community activist, and a proud alumnus of Somerset College. A fun fact about Venus is that she rode the Natchez Trace 444 miles from Nashville, Tennessee to Natchez, Mississippi on a bicycle. So, at this point, we welcome Venus.
Kwe, oho te dut, gine, wodo dodujik, Delawisit, Venus Evans, in a Mi'kmaq witch, Wollastigwewick, from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Canada. Walalin, Wigglemuddle Nin, Waldasi, Maui-Ejik, Alagawado, Umset, Inawegadi. Hello, friends and relations. My name is Venus Evans. I am Micmac Maliseet from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Canada. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here to work for all Native communities. I first wanted to give a special thanks to Diane Lewis for reaching out to the Commission for a speaker from the Indigenous community, of which I am most grateful. It's an honor to be called for this position. I did tell Diane, however, during our email exchanges, I wasn't sure how good of a speaker I would be. I get stage fright and anxiety, so much so that this past Tuesday, I woke up and I was praying. I was like, Lord, are you sure I'm the best person suited to give this presentation? And I heard him answering by saying, yes, my daughter, you give me the glory and I'll show you. And I said, okay, Lord, it's a deal. I proceeded to open my Bible app, and there was a scripture jumping out at me, and it was Philippians 2:13 from the New Living Translation. For God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. I've been taught that God speaks to us in three very important ways: through nature, through others, and through the Word. So today I give God the glory. I do want to ask for forgiveness up front before I get started if I get flustered and I veer off a track. Taking many paths to tell a story is a characteristic of all Native Americans. We draw bits and pieces from different experiences and stories to come together and weave one story. To us, it makes perfect sense, but to most, it's like, get on with it already. So I guess I'll get started. All right. Where's the little... Okay, great. That's where I need to be. I'm sorry. Just say. Okay, great. As was mentioned earlier, I am a member of the Mi'kmaq Nation. We encompass the maritime provinces of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, Canada. Mi'kmaq in our language means friends. The Micmac were the first people to encounter and befriend the Europeans when they arrived on the shores of the St. Johns River, with devastating results, of course. My tribe, next slide, please. My tribe is the Rustic Band of Micmacs of Presque Isle, Maine. We are one of 4 federally recognized tribes of the state. We are Wabanaki, people of the Dawn Land. In addition to my tribe, I have ancestral ties to the Maliseet, Wolastoqiyik, people of Holton, Maine. Wolastoqiyik means people of the beautiful river. Traditionally, our ancestry follows matrilineal lines. However, following grandmother's death in 1990 and our reconnecting with relatives, we learned that the Maliseet tribal rolls were closed to membership, which led us to be taken in by our Micmac cousins. They have embraced and fostered us, and it has been such a blessing. Next slide, please. My grandmother, Ida Phillips Strunk, was born April 19, 1911. She was born on the Maliseet Reserve in Woodstock, New Brunswick. Her mother, Cecilia DeVoe, was a tribal member of that reserve. Her father, Andrew Phillips, was a tribal member of the Bear River Band of Micmacs of Bear River, Nova Scotia. On the reserve, the Catholic Church had full religious and educational authority over the tribe. Grandma would tell us how brutally the children were treated at the Catholic day school. As usual, the children's hair were cut and spankings were given when speaking their native tongue. Grandma was lucky that she only attended to the 3rd grade, if you want to call that lucky. She was the eldest child and was needed at home. At least she escaped the abuse at the hands of the nuns. Tragic that she didn't get to further her education. Grandma was not taken off to boarding school, but her younger sister Esther was. Next slide, please. Right here. This is Esther. Oh, go back one. This is Esther right here. Esther was taken to the Shubenacadie Residential Boarding School in Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. She survived the school, but not the trauma. She died of alcoholism, specifically alcohol poisoning, in her later years. You can go to the next slide, please. Right there she is, just before her death. Go to the next slide, please. Around Grandma's late teens to early 20s, she met and married her first husband, Robert Tompkins. Robert was a white man from Maine. He was several years older than her, but they built a life together in Maine, and they had 3 children together. But tragically, Robert was killed in a work-related accident with the railroad. Grandma soon found herself widowed at 26 with 3 small children. With no visible means of support or family, because her family was still in Canada, she attempted to return to the reserve in Woodstock, but Canada promptly deported her back. Go to the next slide. And, you remember I told you I kind of veer off the path, but I wanted to share some things with you about the Indian Act of 1867 and its progression up to today, and the disparities that it specifically shows to First Nations women's rights and identity. As you can see right here, in 1867, the Indian Act defined an Indian as any male person of Indian blood. The Indian Act disadvantaged women and female lines of descent, which that's where it came from, we're matrilineal. Status Indian women lost their status rights if they married a man who did not have status, as would their children. So that means that even though they're Indian, they could no longer identify as Indian. Additionally, the Act denied women the right to possess marital property. In 1884, the Act was changed to allow men to leave marital property to their wives in their will. However, before this transaction could take place, an Indian agent would have to ensure the good moral character of the wife. Next slide, please. So in 1951, moving ahead, the overhaul of the Act in 1951 removed some of the most offensive political, cultural, and religious restrictions. For example, bans on ceremonies like the potlatch and Sundance were removed. However, male lines of descent were still privileged. As Section 12(1)(b) of the Indian Act stated, a woman who married a person who is not an Indian is not entitled to be registered. Women who married a non-status man still lost their status rights, as did their children. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Moving up to 1985, and this is when it really takes a shift, because this is when my grandmother, after having been born in 1911, regained her status as a Native American. In 1985, Bill C-31 amended the Indian Act to remove gender discrimination and bring it in line with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The amendment allows women who married out and those who by other means lost their Indian status and accompanying rights and benefits to apply for restoration of their status and rights, and also allows their children to apply for registration as status Indians. The Act no longer requires women to follow their husbands into or out of status. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So coming up to 2017, Bill S-3 was an amendment which restored status to women and their offspring who lost their status before 1951, known as the 1951 cutoff, was brought into force on 15 August 2019, according to the government. And according to them, all known sex-based iniquities in the Indian Act have now been addressed. I think that's where I just need you to stop right there. So you can see the disparity that my grandmother faced, as well as other First Nation women in Canada. So I'm going to jump back and take you back to Maine, where grandmother was alone. She couldn't go back home. She had no identity. She had no place to go. She had no financial support. So she found herself alone and destitute, and the Maine Social Services took her children and placed them with white families. And let's just admit the fact, it was for assimilation and in an effort to erase us from existence. As was stated by Richard Henry Pratt, who developed the Carlisle Indian School, "Kill the Indian, save the man." I'll never know just how that affected Grandma. She never spoke of it. I can only imagine, since having children of my own. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, back up. I may have went too far. Just keep going back. Keep going. We're just going to go on a journey, but we're going to have fun doing it. Keep going back. Go back. Back. And one more. Okay, right there. This is when Grandma was in Maine. Sometime later, Grandma met and married my grandfather, Jack Strunk, while living in Holton, Maine. Jack was an Army serviceman stationed in Holton during World War II. His troop provided security for the radio communication operations there. Jack was from Laurel County, so you see the connection, and they both came back to Kentucky following the war. Together, they had two daughters, my mother, Donna, and my Aunt Gladys. Mom would tell us stories growing up that Grandma would always suggest that they do things to lighten their complexion. She said, take some lemon and rub it on your face, and maybe that'll lighten your complexion, and please stay out of the sun. You don't want to, enhance your tan any more than it is. And this was all in an effort not to stand out. When Mom began having children and we were fair-skinned, Grandma was really happy. She said, it's for the best. They'll have a better life. Growing up, I've always been interested in my Indian heritage, and I wanted to learn all I could. When I would ask Grandma to teach me things about our heritage, she would tell me, honey, that won't do you any good. I know in her heart she thought she was protecting me and all of us from all that she endured, but it left me incomplete. I feel that you can't get where you're going if you, without first, don't know where you came from. To Grandmother's credit, she did share names and important facts. We knew ancestors' names and reserves where they were from, which in hindsight leads me to believe it was her way of making sure she got back to her ancestral land. You can go on to the next slide, please. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And right there's our mother at age 15. She was gorgeous, gorgeous. Go on to the next slide, and this is Mom today. She has a plethora of health issues, and she's pretty much homebound and can't travel with us, but she's very proud of the work that we are doing. In 2019, along with my sister Casey, we attended our tribe's annual gathering, which is called a Maui, and that means gathering in Mi'kmaq. While we were there, we sought out an elder to speak with, and all the folks at the Maui said, you've got to talk to Mary Archer. She is the matriarch. So we went, and she was sitting in under some trees around a campfire, and she was talking to all the people who were coming to her to share history. And she sat, she listened to our stories, and shared our tears. And before we left, she told me, the longing you have felt for all these years was for a purpose. You were meant to return your grandmother's spirit back to the homeland. Now she can be at peace. Needless to say, Casey and I, after we left Mary, we sat on the ground and took our shoes off and just dug our feet into the land, the reserve there, just to feel it radiate up our feet to our hearts. I finally felt now my calling and my mission had been completed. I got my grandmother back home. Next slide, please. This is Grandma in Kentucky later. One might hope that peace from discrimination, pain, and trauma would be found in the beautiful Appalachian Mountains. Unfortunately, that would not be the case. Grandma still endured discrimination here in Kentucky, as well as all people of color everywhere at that time. In particular, she would be refused service at restaurants and businesses. On one occasion, she was told that if she wanted something to drink, she would have to drink it from a paper cup. Grandma said, I'd rather go thirsty. She was marginalized by the local law enforcement. For example, she was arrested for adultery. Grandma was divorced from Jack by this time, and she had befriended a local man who was not legally divorced. And because they were sharing a living space together, she was ostracized. She also fell victim of human trafficking, inadequate education, lack of resources, no tribal or familiar support led her to sex for survival. But by the grace of God and Grandma's tenacity to survive, her descendants are living the life she fought so hard for them to have. In dominant society, Native Americans never had a voice or a place at the table until now. We are finally getting the chance to be heard and to be represented in the world around us. We are being embraced, and for that I am thankful I have lived to see it. With all these positive changes in today's social climate, there are still concerns. Next slide, please. If you don't mind, go forward one. I kind of got out of sequence there. notably is the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I just wanted to share with you some disparaging statistics that out of 506 cases that reported over 71 selected urban cities, 128 of those were of missing Indigenous women. 280 cases were of murdered Indigenous women. 98 were cases with an unknown status. And 29 was the median age of these missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. If you'd like more information, you can always go to the Coalitions to Stop Violence Against Native Women. If you don't care, back up one. And this right here tells you what's going on. There's jurisdiction conflict. Let me get my notes on that. Just bear with me. I like to have a little guide here. Okay. Right now, with the contributing factors is the jurisdictional, because there's no clear authority to make decisions and judgments, specifically on Indian land. The land is in federal trust, even though the tribes may have their own government, their own tribal enforcement, they still have to answer to the federal government. So so you've got that imbalance there, as well as what's going on in that state, what's going on in the county, and what's going on with the private establishment around them. So there's no clear-cut authority to make these decisions. So nobody's acting. It's like, it's on you, it's on you, it's on you, it's on you. No, we need to come together. Also, there's a lack of emergency services such as Amber Alert, counseling, family services. Relationships between government entities are fractured. FBI needs to come with the tribal community, create some communication there, because FBI is who goes after all this missing and murdered folks. So need better communication there, as well as state and tribal communication, and just overall community awareness. And once again, you can go to the CVANW website to get more information there. Okay, move forward, and one more. And as you all are aware, there is a lot of news being reported right now with the residential boarding schools. And this has always been an issue. It's just been swept up under the rug until now. And now it can't, with the discovery of children's remains on former school grounds. With the cause being taken up by people of notoriety, it has been given more credence and validity. And here's Michelle Obama addressing that situation. Next slide, please. The time is now for truth and reconciliation and for healing. And what we ask of you is to support the justice and healing. Help us work towards truth, healing, and justice for Indian boarding school impacts. And in doing so, by addressing the history, sharing our testimonies, and providing resources, will increase the awareness of those impacted by boarding schools and their descendants to help foster resilience and support the healing. And you can visit the boardingschoolhealing.org website. Next slide, please. Now, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and it is education. I've always been a firm believer in true American Indian history education. We can no longer let the victor control the narrative of our people. And the ways that you as a community can help us is support us in getting accurate teaching of Native American history in school curriculums. Talk to your legislators, because right now there's a House bill in-house down there in Frankfurt that is working towards that now. It was introduced by Representative Attica Scott out of Jefferson County. And it has been partnered with the African American history curriculum as well. And tell your legislators you're in support of it, and they need to get behind it as well. And I gave that where you could give it as a handout to your congregation. Also, look at Native Knowledge 360. Next slide, please. Native Knowledge 360 was developed by the Smithsonian Institute for the National Museum of the American Indian. And then the Native Knowledge provides educators and students with new perspectives on Native American history and cultures. Most Americans have only been exposed to part of the story, as told from a single perspective through the lenses of popular media and textbooks. NK360 provides educational materials, virtual student programs, and teacher training that incorporate Native narratives, more comprehensive histories, and accurate information to enlighten and inform teaching and learning about Native America. NK360 challenges common assumptions about Native peoples and offers a view that includes not only the past, but also the vibrancy of Native peoples today. So often we get typecast and stereotyped back in the 1900s because of a well-known photographer, Curtis Edwards, that's right. Yeah. He went around in Indian country and posed all the Indians for pictures. I mean, that is a collection, that's good, but we need to allow Native Americans to come out of history and be in the present today. And you can get more information on that from the American Indian Smithsonian. Next slide, please. And when you go to the website, you will see this, so you know exactly what you're looking for. Once again, let me mention that they've already prepared the curriculum. All the teachers have to do is go to that website and download the curriculum to start teaching it. Next slide, please. And there's other social concerns. Of course, there is social justice, and in ways that you can help, and you've started that beautifully by inviting a Native American into your congregation to speak today. So invite Indigenous voices to the table. Stop discrimination against Native Americans whenever you hear it or you see it. Don't be a bystander. Stop it when you see it. Stop cultural appropriation and educate yourself. Next slide, please. And in closing, I'd like to say, be a good relative. Don't culture appropriate. Educate yourself regarding Native American culture and customs. And for example, attend a powwow. You can learn all kinds of history and ceremony and testimony and history there, and the people would be more than willing to speak to you. We'll talk all day if you let us. And while you're there, learn good powwow etiquette. They hand out little leaflets that tells you how to be a good participant in the powwow. Discourage the use of Native American regalia as Halloween costumes. With Halloween coming up, that's a big issue for us. Our regalia is our prayer clothes. And to see it being used as a costume is sacrilegious to us, because this is how we commune with the Creator. So if you see it, discourage it. We sure would appreciate it. And always remember, we don't need you to be us. We need you to be with us. Next slide, please. When Di and I were talking, she said, do you have a saying you like or whatever? And first thing that popped into my head was, well, it's not Native American, it's African, but I really like it. And it's, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And upon trying to prepare for this, it's been very nerve-wracking. I opened my Bible app on Friday, and I knew that I was destined to be here. It was divine providence, because when I opened up my Bible app to read the verse for the day, the gentleman that was presenting it said this proverb right here, and then he referenced Ecclesiastes 4:9 in the New Living Translation. 2 people are better than one, for they can help each other to succeed. I want to thank you all for allowing me to come here today and share a little bit of part of my history with you. I'll be here for a few minutes if you all would like to ask any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. And in our language, when we say thank you, we say Walalan. Thank you.
What a tremendous presentation. That was incredibly moving, and what a gift to all of us and to those listening and watching on Zoom to be able to hear your message. As Unitarian Universalists, we embrace 7 principles, and the first of those is the inherent dignity and worth of every human being. You really spoke to that today, so thank you. Yeah. So, it is time for our offertory. The offering words today come from the Reverend Erica Hewitt. The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation. It's a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. Our mission here is to be a caring community that encourages spiritual growth and actively works to improve our society and the environment. Please leave donations as you are willing and able in our collection plates as you exit today at the end of our service, or by using the app or QR code on your phone. So, there you go. Yeah. And we have music by Forrest for the offertory. What? Words? Oh, no. I'm not sure. No? We thank you for these gifts. May we use them wisely in the service of our congregation and our community. At this time, we have sharing and introductions. Our community is strengthened by sharing with each other and in person. If you would like, you can introduce yourself now, or if you have a significant joy or sorrow to share, please rise as you are able in body or spirit, and let us know your name and briefly tell us what is in your heart. Hand. We have an opportunity for community news. That's church community news. I think Michelle Steiner wanted to say something. Yeah. Okay.
Good morning. I wanted to let everyone know that we're having a yard sale on October 16th. This may be the best kept secret in the congregation, I'm not sure. Just for some reassurance, can you raise your hand if you're thinking of bringing some things to sell? So that would be 2 of us right now. So everyone, look around and see what you have. The plant sale will be going on by Wild Ones that same day. I want to give a shout out to Erica and Casey. They constructed the scarecrows that are representing our church down at Lost River Cave, so I recommend you go see them. That's beautiful artwork. And we are looking for sign changers. If you wouldn't mind after a Sunday to go out and change the letters on the sign, we really could use your help. And Lisa wants us to remember that this Wednesday is Kujian's all-network gathering at 6 o'clock. So you can see the newsletter for the Zoom or the update for the Zoom information.
Just one thing about that October, it is on Indigenous peoples. Angela Arnett Garner is one that got it through the legislature, Indigenous Peoples Day. So if you can come and listen to her, I think it would be quite meaningful. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you are not yet receiving our newsletter, you can check with someone about that and get on the list. Yes?
Actually, I have one more.
Oh.
It's appropriate.
Sure.
I'll speak loud enough so you can hear me. Jeff and I are going to be doing, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. There, I'll get used to it. Jeff and I are holding the table at the Gay Pride event, but we need volunteers. We need people to help us put up the pavilion, but also we need people to do it. We fortunately have Jeff and I and Rich, but we're a little long in the tooth for Gay Pride, so we need younger people there to help us. So please get in touch with me and come in. Great. Yeah, I will talk to you
and
later.
We need a truck.
So
Somebody with a truck to carry it.
it's October the 23rd. That's right.
I also want to share an invitation to learn about membership. If you have questions about Unitarian Universalism or about joining this congregation, please speak with a member of our membership team or our board president, Christina Kruger. If you would like to have that conversation today, you can speak to me. Our former board president is right in the back, and other members here. So we are happy to talk with you. Okay, yeah. We also have bulletin boards and information and brochures out in the foyer area, so please take a look and pick something up to take with you if you would like. We have a Facebook page and website that are also very informative. As our gathering ends, we will extinguish the flame in our chalice, but not the light of truth, not the warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts wherever we go. So there's no postlude today. I will read the last words and extinguish the chalice. So. Go in peace, go in service to others, go in love.